board. But as you know, and if you don't know, give a veteran a mic. So lift every voice and sing, to earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Liberty, as Webster describes it, is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political view. When I hear this stanza, I often think about Mr. Thomas, known only as Thomas. Through word of mouth and generation teachings, he is described as the author of the Wilsons. Generational teachings are stories passed down through generations, from parents to child, to keep family history alive. It's the old version of what is now Ancestry.com. The story of Thomas is that he went to war, and as we calculate, it must have been World War I. We don't know which one, but he went to serve his country, a country that did not see him as equal, a country full of hatred against him for the color of his skin. Yet he still went to fight for his country. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. As the story goes, when Mr. Thomas returned, he found that laws and segregation in the South were still in effect. But he had changed. He knew the value of duty, honor, commitment, and integrity. To do what's right when no one is around. There was some sort of accident where he saved a white man's son, and when the father asked what he could do to repay him, Thomas said, "Take my son Milton to the north with you and give him a better life." And so his son was relocated to New Jersey, actually Mercer County in Trenton. Milton kept the generational teachings alive, though his last name was changed to Wilson. Duty, honor, commitment, and integrity. World War II saw 1.2 black men serve in the U.S. military. Despite being treated as second-class citizens, serving in segregated units, and facing daily prejudices, these brave individuals volunteered to fight for democracy overseas. The irony of fighting for freedom abroad was enduring the oppressive Jim Crow laws at home did not deter them from doing what was right, putting their lives on the line for a cause greater than themselves. Men like Milton David Wilson of Trenton and Paul Mitnall of Lawrence exemplified this courage. Milton joined the U.S. Army and became a cook, honored with the responsibility of cooking for the white officer mess. Yes, there were segregated mess halls. And he was allowed to mix the meals he was not allowed to mix the meals for different racial groups. He was often ordered not to eat the food that he cooked. Paul Mitnall distinguished himself as a Tuskegee Airman. We all know the stories of the brave and distinguished services they provided, protecting our bombers during World War II. These great men kicked open the doors for integration in the military and in the society as a whole. The black press advocated for African Americans in World War II by emphasizing that these soldiers were fighting for democracy while serving in a racially segregated army. The civil rights movement used World War II as a catalyst, ultimately leading President Truman to sign Executive Order 9981, desegregating the U.S. Armed Forces. When these two men returned home, they still faced segregation. They were asked if they would volunteer again, and their answer was yes. Duty, honor, commitment, number 1 and 2. The Korean War marked the first time Executive Order 9981, segregating the armed forces, was fully in effect. African Americans believed that if they served their country with honor, they should not be subjected to racial discrimination. Unfortunately, this was not always the case. Old beliefs persisted among commanding officers, and many units remained segregated, receiving inadequate commanders and lack of supplies. Still, 5 Mercer County residents answered the call to fight in Korea. Frank Barr Sr., James Faust, David M. Wilson, Stonewall Black, and Joseph Wilson, all in the U.S. Army. These men faced segregation, harsh conditions, and experienced the war on 2 fronts. David Wilson remained in the Army for 30 years, distinguishing himself as the first African American of the 63rd Army Band. When asked if they would again do it over, they said yes. Duty, honor, commitment, and integrity. These are number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The Vietnam War was a conflict that divided the U.S., mirroring the division between different generations, political ideologies, and social groups. Yes, it was the first American war where black and white troops were formally integrated, although de facto segregation still occurred. African Americans represent 11% of the U.S. population at that time, yet 16.3% of all draftees were African American. Project 100,000 was used to increase the number of soldiers in Vietnam. Out of 246,000 draftees under Project 100,000, 40% were African Americans, roughly 98,400. Did you catch that?
Indeed.
African Americans comprise 11% of all troops, but only 2% of all the branches were officers. 23% of all African American soldiers were placed in combat units, regardless of their training or education. Racism was prevalent in military bases, where KKK robes were paraded through the bases, and Confederate flags were hung for 3 days after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Still, 2 Mercer County residents, Frank Barr Jr. and Lorenzo Brown, joined the Army knowing they would go to Vietnam. They were denied the right to express their love for their culture, yet they served with duty, honor, commitment, and integrity. Number 8 and 9. Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. During Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, we saw General Colin Powell as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Just as in Vietnam, African Americans served in disappropriated numbers, comprising 25% of all American forces, with the Army closer to 30%. Unlike in Vietnam, the forces were all volunteer. Among 35,000 U.S. troops were women. 40% of those women were African American. These women faced the harsh reality of war, often called to leave their children behind and directed to prepare wills for their families in case they did not return. Despite all the advances, there was still only 10% across the board of African American officers that went beyond O2, which is the second level as an officer. 2 more Mercer County residents would join. Kenneth Barr and Medina Wilson were part of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Medina Wilson distinguished herself as one of the 10% of officers and the first in her family to become an officer. Duty, honor, commitment, integrity. Number 10 and 11. The Global War on Terrorism, Operation Enduring Freedom. On September 11, 2001, terrorist attack killed nearly 3,000 people on American soil. As African Americans, we answered the call to serve. During this war, we saw our first African American commander-in-chief, President Barack Obama. Out of 35,000 women who served in active duty, 4% were African American. Lieutenant Emily Perez led a convoy of 204th Support Battalion in Iraq. I was a part of that battalion, becoming the first African American female officer to be killed in action. During the same time, David Wilson, a young man from Mercer County, joined the Army and completed 3 tours in Iraq. Duty, honor, commitment. Number 12. In 2008, 2 more Mercer County residents joined the Navy, Chantel Wilson and Robert Lewis. In their careers, Chantel has been deployed to Guantanamo Bay, and Robert has served on a ship protecting the Gaza Strip. Chantel has completed 16 years in the Navy and plans to retire with 20 years. Honor, courage, and commitment. Number 13 and 14. If you haven't guessed, this speech is about my family.
Yes.
My family, in which 14 of my family members from Mercer County have volunteered to serve in the military. My speech is about my ancestors, Thomas, who was my great-grandfather. Milton was my grandfather. David is my father. And of course, I'm Medina. And Chantel is my daughter, who is now serving. My uncle is the Tuskegee Airmen. My uncles were the brave people that volunteered. Well, all of us volunteered. None of us were drafted. My speech is about my ancestors and my future, but most of all, this speech is about the African American plight. You do not have to be famous to make a difference. It takes all of us. It is what we do when faced with oppression and tyranny. It's about standing up for what is right when no one is looking. It's about going head on in face of adversary. It's about uniting a family to move forward in a society designed to tear you apart. It's about saving your country even when it doesn't even recognize you. My message is to stand firm and never go back. The only move we can make is forward. And with the words of Langston Hughes, I too sing America. I am your darker brother and sister, and I will lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony of liberty for all. Thank you for allowing me.